leaving in 48 hours. You will no longer be an MSP. How's that feel?
A little bit surreal, but I think overall I feel what I would describe as quite contented. I've spent the last few weeks going around the building saying cheerio to people that I will really miss, and often that's not the obvious people. Kirsty in the coffee bar, or Brenda the cleaner, some of the security guards, and I've been wandering about the building on and off at nights, just saying cheerio to the building. I've spent the last few weeks trying to make a difference. I believe making a positive difference to a piece of legislation that is really close to my heart, the Promise Bill, and of course I made my final speech in the Chamber last week. So, I'm not going to pretend that having been here and it being such a central part of my life, being my life for 27 years, that I don't feel any sadness. Of course I do, but I'm ready to move on. I'm excited about the next phase of life and looking forward to what lies ahead.
And the obvious question now is, what is next?
You will find all of this out in due course. I mean, I'm going to take a bit of time to decompress, get used to not being in elected politics and just finding a different rhythm of life and try it. I'm not the kind of person that will be able to put my feet up for very long. But I do want to try and force myself to sort of slow down a little bit for a period. I've got various projects in the mix that, some of them will start to be evident over the coming months. But I just want to enjoy a different kind of life, a different pace of life, doing more of the things that make me happy, that I find fulfilling, and hopefully things that can still make a difference to issues that I care about.
And the book coming, obviously. There's been much talk about this.
There's been much talk. I've decided to talk about it on public platforms to put myself under pressure, right, and I'm starting to mildly regret it. I've got the paperback of my memoir coming out this summer, so that gives me a bit of more time. Look, I'd love to write a novel. Reading novels is what I've loved doing in my spare time since I was a kid. So I'd love to write a novel, but it's an art form. Not everybody can do it. Maybe I'll never be able to pull it off, but I look forward to having a bit more time to see if I can manage it.
So you've not put pen to paper yet?
I've kind of put pen to paper a little bit. I've not got all that far with it. I've got an outline plot in my head. I've got, some, thoughts about the trajectory of the story, but there's a world of difference between having that and actually having something down that might pass the description of being an actual book. But, I'm going to have a bit more time to dedicate to it very soon.
I think it's fair to say that the last few years haven't always been kind to you. Well, your sort of latter months as First Minister were quite fraught, and then obviously since. Is that period sort of soured you in politics, do you think?
No. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think there's been periods over the last few years where I have maybe thought I've completely fallen out of love with politics and I never want to have anything to do with it again once I'm out of Parliament, but that's been fleeting. I think when I published my book last year and started doing lots and lots of big events around that, I felt the love of politics, the appetite for politics, small p politics, reactivate in me. I'm leaving frontline politics, I'm leaving elected politics, but I don't think I'm the kind of person who'll ever be completely silent on the issues I care most about. And so no, and you know what, it hasn't, and I'm really grateful for this because I do recognise that it might have been different. It hasn't soured me as a person. On the contrary, some of the things that have happened in the last couple of years, last 3 years, I would dearly love to be able to erase and have them never happen. But I also know that they've made me a stronger person. They've made me somebody who's got a much keener appreciation of what matters in life, who matters in life, and it maybe sounds bizarre to say, but I'm probably a happier person having gone through the last few years than I might have been otherwise.
And I think just on that, one of the sort of most striking and most emotional passages in your book was the period where you were talking about you went to the northeast and stayed with a friend, and there's this sort of scene that you set looking out over the sea. Is that the impact of that period, as you felt it then? Is that still creeping up now? Are you still dealing with that, or like you say, have you come out the other side? Do you think?
Yeah, I think I've come out the other side. I mean, I don't know. I mean, something as traumatic, and I use that word very deliberately, as that. You know, it might always lurk there in the back of my mind, but it's definitely no longer at the forefront of my mind. And I feel, you know, when I wrote my book, I wanted to not shy away from, you know, the hard impact of some of that, but I also wanted to I guess, narrate the resilience and the coming out of the other end. And that's what I mean. I'm not trying to say, isn't it great I went through, you know, that really tough thing. It's not. I wish I hadn't. But I do know that it's made me a stronger person, and probably somebody embarking on this next phase of my life in a much better headspace, with a much better outlook and perspective than I might otherwise have had.